Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Worship Ministry Training Podcast, a monthly podcast for worship leaders. Listen, worship ministry training exists to give overwhelmed and stuck worship leaders the practical training they need to be confident, excellent, and successful. That's why we exist. We've been doing it for 6 years. If you're new to the podcast, I would encourage you to hit subscribe, whether you're watching it on YouTube or listening. That way you will get updated of new episodes when they drop. And we always try to aim to have every single episode be as helpful, practical, and in-depth as possible to give you real, tangible tools to use. And so go dig through the episode list if you haven't yet. Go find the topics that you need help with right now and listen to them and apply them to your ministry today. Today, I am talking with Jake Gosselin from Churchfront. Now, this month is kind of dedicated for us to do online church well. Last episode was all about the content of our online church services and then how to kind of do the hybrid online/live thing, because that's going to be our reality for the next few months. But this episode with Jake is all about the technical side of how to create a great looking and sounding live stream. So you're going to get really helpful tips, really helpful tools, and a lot of information from Jake. So get your pencil and pen ready, and let's dive into today's episode. All right, see you guys on the back end. Hey everybody, I am here with the one and only Jake Gosselin, the creator of Churchfront. Jake, we talked on the phone, I don't know, last week or a few days ago. So I always get to see your beautiful face, but you've never seen my ugly mug. But here we are, video call. How you doing, bro?
Dude, you are tall, dark, and handsome, so don't give me any of that self-deprecating, ugly mug. Everybody go check out Alex's YouTube channel. Do you have videos of yourself on your YouTube channel yet, so people can actually see you, man?
Maybe like 2 or 3. I kind of like to hide behind the podcast microphone, but yeah, working on it.
Great to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and if you guys don't know, Jake is like all over YouTube. He's like YouTube famous. He is incredibly helpful and just always putting out practical content for worship leaders, far exceeding and superseding the Worship Ministry Training Podcast. So go check out Jake, go check out Churchfront, go check out all his resources. Jake, you recently put out a course related to live streaming. And so today I wanted to pick your brain so that you could just share, like, how do we live stream well? Because, you know, so many churches jumped online during the COVID crisis and started streaming, which is great. But not all of them are doing it well. And you've created a course and some resources to help them do it well. So I wanted to talk about that. But before we talk about like the techie, geeky stuff, like I just wanted to ask you the why question. Like now that restrictions are lightening up and in-person services are starting to happen throughout the country and around the world, like why should churches continue to stream their services online, and why should they invest resources into doing it well?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think it makes us think about our ecclesiology and the role of live in-person worship gatherings for our churches and how important that is. I know over the past couple of months, man, I just miss it. I'm in Colorado. It's late May. They still, I think in a couple of days, we'll hear from the governor the situation of exactly what the next steps should be or can be for churches to start gathering together. I know a couple of days ago, the president he announced like, hey, worship gatherings are essential services. So states, you can't, keep them from getting together. And it's like, it is alarming, like I don't like to this isn't a political channel and I don't like to get too caught up in this stuff. But at the same time, it's important stuff, like in terms of like, man, when you think about our government preventing us from assembling for our religious purposes, right? Like this is like pretty fundamental, at least to those of us in the States. Maybe there's folks listening in those other countries that doesn't really make a difference. But it's just been a weird time to navigate this as a worship leader, as a Christian, as a United States citizen who values our principles and the Constitution that we were founded on. We want to be careful not overlapping those things too much. At the same time, I think some people are a little too idealistic about like completely separating those things. That's just kind of the nature of life. So there's those factors that come into play. And I think over the next couple months, very few churches are just going to be able to go back to normal like it was before COVID, where you can just have your rooms packed with people. So this is due to both, I think, government regulation will like really discourage churches or prevent churches from doing that. And also people are just kind of paranoid and afraid of catching this virus still, right? So that's the situation where like, yeah, where things are opening back up, but leveraging our online platform is still going to be an important part for us to continue to do our thing as churches. And I really don't think as much of a technology, tech savvy, innovative guy, whatever you want to call me, as much of that as I am, I'm also very much like, I have a deep appreciation for in-person worship, and I don't think live streaming or online church can ever be a complete replacement for that. I think there's certain aspects of our faith, like the incarnation, for example, like Jesus Christ didn't like Skype call us or Zoom call us to come tell us about the gospel and, die for our sins and stuff like that. He came in the flesh, right? And like, I think, man, as powerful as the virtual world is, and I love it, I just don't think it's like ever going to be a complete replacement for our in-person gatherings. But in the meantime, I think we should use this as an opportunity to learn about the tools we can leverage to stream worship online, especially for folks who are really, like I said, just concerned about coming into a room of people and potentially, they could be older or more vulnerable to the virus, or yeah, maybe there's just regulations that the government has that we kind of simply can't get around legally. So, if we want to comply with that, then we have to make sure we have some online options as well. So that's why, yeah, this forced everybody to come online, but I don't think the need to be online and do it well is going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear a tech guy whose whole business and ministry is online say how important in-person gathering is. Like, that's really eye-opening, and I think you make some really valid points. And at the same
I think it's both, man. Well, I'll just jam on that because like, think about like how Starbucks is like the most successful coffee company out there, right? And it's not because they have even the best coffee in the world or whatever. Like, and sure, like I can make coffee at home, or I can meet people, my friends, over Skype or FaceTime. But there's just something valuable to these in-person live gatherings that we have. It's part of our culture. It's part of human nature, and that we just love it. I think it's a good part of human nature, that kind of built-in desire for real life experiences and community. And that's why not only do we see that in the church, but we also see that in other places like movie theaters. Like, we all love getting together and watching on the big screen in a movie theater, right? Like, that's why I just don't think there's some folks out there who are like, oh, online church is the future. And I'm like, yeah, it's a part of the future. I just don't think it's ever going to be a replacement.
Yeah, I heard the term phygital. Have you heard that term? It's like physical and digital. It's kind of like the new. It's for basically for marketing for small companies. They need to become phygital organizations. It sounds really stupid to say, but like just the concept that we have to seamlessly move between live and online. And I don't know, I was thinking about just the potential though that so many churches have just barely tasted by going online and seeing numbers. You hear churches are like, wow, we have 4 times more people watching our services now than we had ever in our building. And I think that shows to the scalability of online. And obviously you are able to reach 100,000 or more, viewers on YouTube because it's totally scalable. You create one video and it goes to multiple, many people. You don't have to do, 18 webinars or, it's you're not contained to a building, even though the building is valuable. So I think it's worth churches doing online well and creating that experience that maybe it's not equal to in person, because nothing can ever be as valuable as like that human connection, but we can't discount the connection of what online does bring, and that there are real people behind the screens. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I have learned through this time, is that there are real people behind the screens who have real needs and who are there because they need you to minister the gospel to them through their device. And I think that's why we should seek to do online as best as we can, knowing that it will never, replace the gathered church, the ecclesia, or whatever it is, ecclesia, however you say it. So, yeah, man. Yeah. So okay, well, with that kind of like groundwork laid, what do churches need to do to get a good live stream? Like, let's talk about the gear. Because in my last episode with Carl Barnhill, we talked about kind of the content of what our live stream services should be showing, and that's kind of a moving target at this point. But the gear, that's static. Like, you need this type of gear, and there's no getting around it. So what would you say is like the minimum amount of gear that a church needs to get a decent quality online stream going?
Yeah, so the live streaming setup can be as simple and budget friendly or as advanced and expensive as you want it. There's such a wide spectrum. And I think for your typical church where you have maybe your church has typically 100 to 200 people in attendance, like a lot of the recommendations I'll give, I think will be for that type of church, because that's a lot of the folks probably listening just statistically fall into that bucket. And maybe I'll kind of think through some of the mistakes I'm literally seeing and hearing on people's live streams where they could make a couple simple tweaks here and there with their gear, software setup that would really make the 80% difference of the quality at the end of the day. So when it comes to your live stream, you have a couple things going on. You have some sort of video capture device or devices. Sometimes it's multiple devices capturing video for you. You have your audio capture device. Fortunately for all of us at a lot of churches, we already have good audio capture devices in place. We have microphones, we have mixing consoles, we have our sound system that's already kind of built into our sanctuary, ready to capture high quality audio. And then, of course, we want to capture our presentation software too, like ProPresenter usually is the most popular software out there, running lyrics, running our pastor's presentation for their sermon and such. So that's kind of how I break down those are the three various content mediums we want to be able to capture so then we can send it online. The video, like live action video, like your people on camera, high quality audio, and then some sort of presentation software. That's and you can get more creative beyond that with your live streaming strategy. But if we're to kind of at least just capture, let's say, what's happening live in church on a Sunday morning, those are the three primary things we want to capture. So if you're just getting started with a simple setup, because maybe your church has just been doing, a very kind of rough Facebook lives, YouTube lives using a smartphone, because that's kind of the brilliance of this is that you can use a basic device like a smartphone and simply just go live with that. But the quality and it's going to be pretty low. You're going to be pretty limited in everything that you can accomplish with that type of advice. So I would always recommend for churches, if you really just want to up the video quality for your setup, I would get your hands on some sort of entry level mirrorless camera. You guys have probably seen these before. Canon makes some great cameras. I think it's the Canon M. I'm actually not going to try to name the model for it, but the one I actually have is the Panasonic GH5. The Canon M50. I think that's the model. That's kind of an entry level mirrorless camera. The Panasonic GH5. That's what I use for all of our cameras. Or you could go the PTZ Optics route. PTZ Optics makes a bunch of great pan tilt zoom. That's what PTZ stands for. Pan tilt zoom cameras that can be remote controlled. They're ideal for your sanctuary environment where maybe you're just going to keep a couple cameras mounted permanently and someone can remote control them from your tech booth. So those are the few of the camera options that when you compare it to like a smartphone, you're going to see a significant bump in quality. And you can spend anywhere from $600-$700 for like the Canon M50 to like, a PTZ Optics camera is like $2,000. Totally, I think it's totally worth the investment in the increase of video quality that you'll get from that type of camera setup. And then with the camera, you're going to need some sort of video capture device to send that video feed from the HDMI output on your camera into your computer, or maybe a video switcher. We'll talk about more options there. But you got to get that video feed from the camera to your video switching software or device somehow. And that's where a video capture device comes in handy. So you have a video capture device like the Blackmagic Ultra Studio Mini Recorder. This is the one I'm actually using right now to film this video. I'm going from my GH5 HDMI into the Ultra Studio Mini Recorder, and then it goes Thunderbolt 3 into my laptop. So that's how my computer can capture this camera signal. AJA makes a great HDMI capture device. And then these capture devices, though, they're very hard to find right now because everybody is buying all these things up. Another route, though, like if you go to the PTZ Optics cameras, is like they actually have USB outputs on some of these cameras where you don't need a separate video capture device. You go straight from the camera itself, plug USB into your computer, and then the camera will show up as a webcam on your computer. Simple as that. So that's the kind of the first recommendation I have for the video improvements, and just having a good solid beginner setup. And what's great is you can get multiple cameras down the road. Like you can kind of expand on the system as needed. So it's kind of the beauty of using these mirrorless cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we dig into a little bit about cameras and lighting and all that stuff? Like we'll talk about, because we still have to talk about like the switcher or even the, lyric software, like how are they getting the lyrics on the screen, or the pastor slides, those types of things. We'll talk about that later, but let's real quickly just dig into cameras. So like just give some advice, like if people are, because let's say they were using a camera in the back of the room before and now they want to up the quality. So what kind of like lighting tips or angles should they be thinking about when they're trying to, light? And obviously like every stage is different and every, room is different. So it's got to be generic enough advice, but just general tips of lighting and framing and how they should be thinking about angles and those types of things.
Yeah. It's the need to bring all of our worship services online, I think, have exposed how poor a lot of churches' lighting situation are, like inside of their sanctuary, because a lot of time these spaces are built out and like nobody's really thinking about, can we actually clearly see our subjects on stage? Like the people who are preaching, singing, leading songs, they just put some like typical, lighting fixtures in the ceiling, and they don't think about that. Fortunately, you can solve this pretty easily. The best lighting technique is what they call a 3-point lighting technique, where you say you have a given subject who's just standing on the stage there. So if I'm standing on stage, I'm looking out over the congregation. Ideally, we're going to want to have a key light and a fill light that are in front of me and kind of at a 45 angle vertical from me, my eye line, I guess, and then also a 45 degree angle horizontally from me. So I know it's a little hard to demonstrate that on a podcast here, but basically have the good front lighting, the light that's the light fixtures that are lighting the front of your subject, and then ideally it's great to have some back lighting. So for your front lighting, I like ellipsoidal light fixtures. Those really light your subjects well. They're just going to be a nice, often I like to have my front lighting be kind of like almost a daylight color temperature. So not too cool of a color, but you don't want it warm. Somewhere kind of, but closer to the cool side of things. And then for a backlighting, you can use, there's lots of these like LED color fixtures out there. Usually if you throw backlighting up against the wall behind you, that'll look good, create some separation. You can also have another backlight kind of pointed at the back of your subject, so it kind of brings out their hairline and creates some nice separation as well. But start with good front lighting. Use just regular light. Don't use those color LED lights because it's going to make your people look like aliens or something like that. Just use natural tungsten lighting or regular lighting there, and then use your LED washes and stuff like that to just be good backlights. And visually, that will really help out the situation a lot. And then of course, you're going to want to make sure the exposure settings are good on the camera as well. You're going to be working with aperture, ISO or gain, as well as shutter speed. There's, again, like we could talk all day long about those settings. It's a little hard to, just especially describing them in a podcast format's a little tricky, but you're going to use the lighting fixtures you have, maybe even some natural light coming from windows, but also the exposure settings on your camera. And it's kind of like this balancing act to kind of get you that final product of what looks good.
Yeah. So people should spend at least a day on this before they decide to put it up on the live stream. So, and again, this is why I really want to highlight and point to Jake's course on live streaming. And so he will walk you through every single step of this process. He does a great job explaining it and breaking it down, making it simple. So if this is overwhelming, just go get his course. You'll be happy that you did. So let's talk, maybe talk about the actual act of, blending in the lyrics and then pushing it out to the internet. What does that look like?
Yeah. So capturing presentation software, the easiest way to do that is if you have ProPresenter 7, if you have ProPresenter 6, I'd say upgrade, because it's totally worth it to make the upgrade now. It's a much better software. And what's awesome is they have what's called NDI. It's a way to send video from ProPresenter to your streaming software over a network. So it could be Wi-Fi. I would recommend though using a hardwired network so there's no like lag or latency. And ProPresenter lets you create a separate screen, virtual screen for your live stream. And then you're going to remove the black background. So you just have white lyrics, put it as the lower third, like the lower part of the screen. And then you're going to send that, those lyrics on that virtual screen over NDI into your streaming software. So that streaming software could be Ecamm Live. It could be vMix. Those are my two favorites, Ecamm's for Mac, vMix for Windows. It could be OBS too. And you'll open up those applications and they automatically detect any NDI signals on their network, and you'll see your ProPresenter screen as an option there to add an overlay onto your live stream video. So that's definitely the quickest, most efficient way to do it, especially if you're doing a simple setup. And this is the setup we cover in my beginner's course, where like you have one good camera, you want to get lyrics from ProPresenter, and then pull audio from your mixing console as well. It's just like you can get a really good quality with just very few pieces of gear in place. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to talk about audio maybe in a bit. What kind of budget are we talking about, like to do a basic setup well?
Yeah. So you could start with, let's say, for a camera, on the low end for a camera, you're not going to want to spend probably, less than $300 for an expensive camcorder you can find at Best Buy, like the Canon HF 800, I think is the model number. But if you really want like professional looking quality, that's when you're going to want to get one of those mirrorless cameras that I recommend, like the Panasonic GH5, Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. Like it just looks really great. And it's like that's going to be around like the $1,000 to $2,000 price point for that, or a PTZ optics camera. Mm-hmm. So you get that, or you could do you could do the few $100 route, but you just know there's going to be a significant reduction in video quality. And then a lot of these other tools, I think most churches already have, like in terms of probably you already have a computer in your tech booth that you could use to run your streaming software. And you already have your mixing console in a place. If you probably already have ProPresenter, hopefully you've upgraded to ProPresenter 7, right? So a lot of these tools are pretty much in place. So most of like the new investments that churches are making are pretty much in the camera gear side of things. And that can range from a few $100s to a few thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think if you guys want to see what a good, clean, simple setup looks like, maybe Jake, I can find one of your little church service videos where you show your setup and where it's you guys in a room and there's 3 of you and it's cutting back and forth. And I want to talk about that right now. Like give some advice to not just the camera angles, but when you should cut from one shot to the next shot. So for your little live stream setup, like, you got the piano shot and you got the leader shot and a couple close-ups. Like, how do they know when to cut, why to cut? Like, what's the philosophy behind like good video directing, I guess?
Yeah. So the setup you're referring to, if folks ever go to Mission Lakewood Church on YouTube, you can see our service videos that we pre-record and publish, and we'll probably continue doing that for the foreseeable future, because we don't even have a space to meet in now because the schools are all shut down. But that setup that we're talking about now, we're getting into multiple cameras, right? And that's kind of the next level, where everything I described so far was more of like a beginner's level, where you're just sending a video camera feed and your ProPresenter lyrics into software like Ecamm Live or vMix that just runs on a computer. And what that software is doing is it's switching video for you. It's also encoding the video to be then sent online and to broadcast to your audience. And there's kind of some limitations with a beginner setup like that. And when you get into multicam setups, that's when you're going to end up investing in more hardware. So you're going to get more cameras, but also you're going to want a dedicated video switcher. And my favorite switchers are the ones by Blackmagic, the ATEM switcher, ATEM. They make different ranges. They have the ATEM Mini Pro, which is a good starting point for some churches. I have the ATEM Television Studio HD, which will allow for some like more growth and adding more cameras down the road. But what's happening there is instead of all that processing, video cutting, and all that stuff happening on my computer, it's happening on the separate device, which then kind of eases the workload from my computer. Or I could completely bypass having to use a computer at all. So that kind of gives some context to that particular setup and what folks will be seeing if they go check out our videos on my church's YouTube channel. When it comes to video switching, so this is kind of like an art, like where it's kind of hard to describe how to know the timing of this. And what we do, we use Ableton Live to run our click and tracks, and we automate lyrics and lighting, do all that fun stuff. You can actually automate video switching angles with Ableton Live as well. So we go through and build out our song sessions, and Chipper, who's our music director who builds those out, like he knows our camera setup, and we have our MIDI cues that we drag onto the Ableton timeline for the song. And we just kind of pick we just kind of feel it out, like what's going to keep this kind of visually engaging for the congregation. And so usually at like higher energy points of the song, you'll see more faster camera changes. If a particular instrument is playing, we'll feature that instrument. I mean, right now we have a simple setup of a wide angle of all three of us, kind of a side wide angle of all three of us, and then the hands of our pianist, right? So it's very simple to choose from. So whenever there's an instrumental, we'll like cut to his piano hands or whatever, and then cut back to the other angles after that. So I would say watch like a lot of great productions already out there, like stuff by Bethel or maybe some of the other bigger churches, and just get a feel for it. Like you'll notice, man, like sometimes they're switching angles like super, super fast. They also have way more cameras to work with. I think when you have fewer cameras, it looks kind of weird to just keep bouncing back and forth super fast. Yeah. But even like having a benchmark of like, okay, maybe during a given verse, I'll bounce around it, every two phrases of lyrics or something like that. Or it's really hard to quantify that though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the point is that the more cameras you have, the more engaging and in-depth and immersive you can make the experience. And so I think for churches who have the budget and who aren't afraid of, tiptoeing into this, like dream big, plan for multiple cameras, plan for somebody who's switching, and, like Jake said, go check out what other churches are doing so you can get a sense for like, oh, that feels good, or, oh, that feels really like poorly done. And then just experiment and go for it. And I think that's the beauty of life, is it's a never ending learning process. And so, just go for it. I think what you said is very helpful, that you should feature what you hear. So in other words, your eyes should see what your ears are hearing, so that's kind of a good just general point. And then, like you said, the more intense the song gets, the faster the cuts. And then, even little things like the downbeat, like if you can get your video to switch on the downbeat of the chorus, like it feels like it's one experience. And so, those are some really helpful tips. And I think, like I said, don't be afraid, guys. Just try it out and start small and add and go for it from there. I thought it would be helpful. So, like you said, most churches are in the 200 or under range, right? Some of them are, less than 80 people. I think the average church size in America is like 80 people. But we do have listeners who are at larger churches. I'm at a larger church. I wanted to share with our listeners just a little bit about our setup. And I'm not techie at all, like nothing compared to Jake. And so I'm just going to share what we have. And then I'm going to share maybe some leadership tips that I've learned in kind of helping get the best out of our tech crew and our camera operators. And so I'm going to share that. And then I want to talk with you about audio, because there's a whole missing component to our conversation at this point, and we'll wrap that up at the end. But okay, so at our church, we have I think we have 4 or 5 cameras. I think we have 4 cameras on like the tripods with the handles. We have 2 PTZs, those remote control cameras that are kind of just placed in different angles that, can get different shots. We have now, this is new for us, we have 1 roaming camera, a person on stage. Actually, we have two because it's all live stream and there's no one in the room. And so, who cares if they're in the way because they're not blocking anybody.
Yeah.
So that's new for us. And it's been nice to get some really cool, like up close guitar shots with nice movement to them. I heard Bethel, actually, did I hear it from your awesome Bethel YouTube video where like they do the figure 8 movement on the camera?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I probably heard it from you guys. So they kind of like move the camera like constantly, so it creates energy. And then we have one director who's running the switching software, and who's also directing the camera operators through like one of those headphone comm systems. And then obviously we have our pro presenter person who's just like pushing the lyrics because we're not as smart as you to put it to Ableton. Although I should take your course and then I'd be able to do that. But
so you have 7 cameras. Is it 7 cameras total?
I want to say there might be more. There's like a drum cam that just points at the drums, and there might be more than that. I don't know. So here are some things that I think really make a difference to take the execution of video, because we were doing video before, but now like we've had to take it to like a whole other level, right? So what we've done now is like, okay, we ask our directors and our camera operators to listen to and learn the songs, just like the band does. Learn the songs, learn the song structure. So they're going to be checking Planning Center and learning and preparing. Hopefully, that's kind of, we're trying to cast a new vision for that. The second thing is we actually practice with the camera operators and the directors before our service, and we like include every element of the worship time, including speaking moments, prayers. I mean, we don't say the prayer, but we'll be like mumble, 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 in Jesus' name, amen, so that the band can practice how that transitional prayer is going to go, and the camera operators can kind of get a feel for it. And then after we practice before service, we have a tech huddle. It's like 5 minutes. Everyone's in the back with their Planning Center open on their phones. We talk through all the important shots, who's leading which song, important instrumental parts, who's praying, when they're praying, and if we're going to talk like on top of an intro of a song so that they can get to our face in time, because what I've found, Jake, is like the big mess ups we've had are that we were not preemptive in our shots. We were reactive in our shots, meaning if there was a guitar line, you want to see the guitarist the moment that your ears hear that line. But what we were doing is we were hearing this big guitar line, but they were filming the drummer, and by the time the camera operator got to the guitarist, his part was almost finished. And like, that's a huge distraction, and so I would say those little leadership tips of having people listen to the songs, the tech people, having them practice with the band, and then having that little huddle has helped us just even only over the last couple weeks get more preemptive with our shots, so that your eyes are seeing what your ears are hearing, and that there's not this cognitive dissonance, because it's such a distraction. I don't know about you, but I see it and I'm like, oh, show me the person talking, like it's horrible. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Do you want to add anything to that, or?
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. Like the communication, especially when you have live camera operators like that, having a good comm system so they can talk to each other, and if folks like maybe they're just trying to figure out how to navigate that, like I would encourage people to check out Bethel Productions YouTube channel. They'll share their multi-view with like the comms, so you can kind of hear how Chad, their video director, is talking them through stuff. But they're a team. Like when I visited them and hung out with at that conference and filmed behind the scenes there of what they do, like they're a very tight knit team, and they just kind of know, like they just, I don't know, like I don't specifically remember Chad having to tell people like, oh, there's a guitar solo coming up. I think their camera operators just knew. They just knew the songs. So that's a really important point for sure.
Yeah. And with Bethel, like they're so fluid and flowy that like that team has had to learn to anticipate and they have so many cameras, they can kind of be everywhere, so they can get. One other thing I would say, if you're doing live cameras with a live director, which I think some churches will do and many churches will hopefully start doing, last little bit of advice is have a wide shot. That's your safety net. So if your roaming camera operator trips and falls on his face, which we have had happen twice.
Oh no.
We're like, we need to get wireless gear for this guy. But you can always go cut to that wide shot, and you won't have like this, this weird shaky shot in the middle. So it's kind of like your safety net shot. So cool. Yeah. Well, we've talked about the cameras, we've talked about lighting, we've talked about the switching software. Now we got to make it sound good, right? And you're actually releasing another course because you're a beast, man. You're crazy, about broadcast audio. So how should our listeners approach audio for broadcast, and what are the best practices, tips, and mindsets that we should adopt to make our videos not just look great, but sound amazing too?
Yeah. So most of us have our mixing console for our regular live worship venue in our church, our sanctuary, worship space, whatever you call it. And that mixing console is creating our mix for the people who are in the room. It can also create some monitor mixes for our musicians and such. But the mixing console, especially when you have just one of them like that, it's going to fall short in creating a really good mix for your online audience. And some churches will just send their main mix from their mixing console to their online audience, and it just doesn't sound good at all, because when people are listening online, they're not hearing the musicians and your pastor and all of them in the context of the actual acoustics of that live room. So that's why there's such a disconnect between, you might think it sounds fine in the room, then you listen to it on your phone or on your computer and just like, wow, this sounds horrible. So we need a separate mixing solution for your online broadcast audio. So my favorite way to do this, and I was inspired by seeing how the guys at Bethel do this, is to use a digital audio workstation like Ableton Live, Pro Tools, Logic Pro, any of those digital audio workstations, which probably a lot of us, maybe even be using already to do multi-track recording or production. But you can actually use that software to create a separate high-quality mix for your live stream. So what you're going to do is you have a mixing console. Maybe you have like the X32 by Behringer. A lot of these mixing consoles are doubling as large audio interfaces that you can plug them into your digital audio workstation like Ableton. And you're going to send your individual channels of audio from your mixing console into a computer in your tech booth. It could be in a separate room as well if you have like audio networking set up at your church. But at the very least, you could just USB cable out of your mixing console into your computer. And then you're going to be able to mix that audio in your digital audio workstation. And you just have so much more power and capability to really dial in a professional mix when you do it that way versus your regular mixing console. Because even these digital mixing consoles we have, like the X32, it's great because, you can apply EQ, gates, compression, basic processing. But when you're using a digital audio workstation like Ableton Live, you're pretty much unlimited in how many plugins you can add to a particular channel of audio to really hone in that sound. And you can use the same third-party plugins that professional music producers are using to cut like all the albums that we're listening to from even popular artists out there, and just have really amazing compressors and reverb, and you can even do this cool drum replacement trick. I've yet to hear drums mixed for online that were like truly the actual microphones and kick drum and stuff like that you're hearing. Dude, I'll listen to it. I'm pretty hard judge. Okay. I'm a very hard judge, but I've yet to hear a mix where like, I mean, it can sound great, but not like blow me away. And like when you're listening to Bethel and hearing their drums on their live stream, like you're not listening to the actual kick drum and snare drum on that drum set. Cheaters. Usually toms and cymbals and stuff sound good, but kick and snare drum, you just have to have that sound dialed in right. Yeah. And the trick to do that is to use a drum replacement plug-in like Trigger 2 by Steven Slate. And what it does is in the moment, it'll listen for whenever your drummer hits their snare, and then it will replace it with like a professionally recorded, produced snare drum sample of audio, snippet of audio. So that's what the audience will end up hearing. And it's just like, sounds fantastic. So for everybody who's listened to Bethel online and be like, why do their drums sound so amazing? It's like, because they replace it. It's not the actual drums. Cheaters. Hey, it's replacement.
Yeah.
But no, it's the thing, right? Like that. Also tuning, vocal tuning, very important for people to have. It's just like our voices, especially when we're listening in a broadcast context or post-production context, like, you got to put tuning on the vocals, or else it's not like you're going to be overusing it. You don't want to sound like T-Pain or Owl City or whatever, but it really helps lock in that sound, because there's things that we can hear in a live environment that are more, our ears are more forgiving, but like when you're pushing this online and we're listening back on our devices, we're a lot less forgiving in those formats. So vocal tuning, drum replacement, those are some of the advanced tips. And when you use a digital audio workstation, you have a decent computer, have like a quad core, 16 gigs of RAM, like maybe a newer MacBook Pro, and that's plenty of power to handle it. Like I have all these plugins running on my computer, and in Ableton Live, it takes like 15% of my processing power on the computer, so it's not even that processor intensive. And then what's cool is you'll be able to send the master output from that digital audio workstation to wherever your live streaming software video switcher is. So that's what that's the latest thing that I've been focusing on. This new course we developed. We've had 500 worship leaders and tech team leaders join in on this like beta program that we're doing over the month of June. And we closed enrollment to it yesterday, but it's going to be, once the course is done, I imagine by early July, it'll be open back up for more folks who want to hop in. So
that's awesome. Yeah. And I think you mentioned it, but if not, we'll do it in a second, how to get the audio from that to the switcher to embed it into the video. But
yeah,
I wanted to add just a few points to what you said. One is, well, personally, we don't use drum replacement. We don't tune our vocals. We just try to get people who can sing well. But I know that's not the case. Where, do you want
me to make a YouTube video judging your live stream?
I do want you to judge my live stream. Please do it.
Did you see? I made a video, like I called it Online Church Review. And
I saw it.
Yeah, then a bunch of people were like, "Hey, do this church, do this church." So maybe I'll do a second version, and I'll add your church to the list.
Oh my gosh, now I'm scared. So okay, you should, and I will be embarrassed, and all my listeners can just laugh. But maybe I'll try to find a live stream link to put in the show notes. But so mic placement is huge, and like getting good sound. I would say if you want good sound, start with your source. Get a good bass tone from your stage. Get a good bass tone. Teach your vocalists how to hold their microphone, how to not pop into it with the P's, make sure your guitar pickup sounds good. And we do use our real drum sounds, and we are though talking about switching from, like, right now we're just mixing on like a little broadcast console, it's not little, but it's 32 channels or something, or maybe 64, I don't know, but we're talking about switching to a DAW, because we can only take it so far on the little console, so I do agree with that completely. But I would just encourage the listeners listening that if you want a good sounding band, like, teach your band how to be great musicians. There's like, you could put Shane and Shane on a stage with like the worst gear, and they're going to make it sound good. Or you could put, a lame worship band on a stage with the best gear, and they're not going to make it sound good. And so, go back through all of my podcasts about worship or, musical excellence. Go check out Jake's channel. Teach your team how to play better. And that means you have to learn how to play better too. And so just let's keep challenging ourselves to grow. So that's my final word on audio, which isn't even about audio. It's about, the source. Did we talk about getting the audio into the switcher?
Yeah. So we didn't, but there's multiple ways to go about this, and it's so much of it kind of depends on your setup. But like the way I do it is, so we use Dante audio networking for everything. And if you guys haven't heard of Dante, it's just like it's just amazing. It's going to make your life so much easier in how you get audio to and from your different computers, your mixing console, all that stuff. So it's kind of like Dante's similar to how you can just plug your computer into your X32 over USB, but instead of just being limited to that one USB connection, you can have like a whole network of devices and send audio to and from different things. So what we do, and this would work over the USB setup, at least from this one computer to the mixer, is we send all of our individual channels into the computer running Ableton. We mix it down, and then our master output of Ableton, we send back over digital audio into the mixing console, into like its own channels on the mixing console. And then from there, we just use because on an X32, for example, you can take one of your analog outputs on the back of the board and you can assign it to be the direct out for a particular channel. So basically we have 2 analog outputs that are going to be the direct out for our broadcast mix left and right. And then we send those XLR signals into our ATEM video switcher. So all of our video cameras and then our audio, mixed audio, are combined together in the ATEM video switcher. And then that creates the final product. So we don't even send it into streaming software. But you could do that. Like you could theoretically, you want to make sure you have a computer that's beefy enough to do this, but like you can run Ableton live on the same computer as you're running like Ecamm Live, and you can virtually, there's a couple apps out there that you can send audio kind of over this like virtual routing system on your computer. I think it's called Loopback is the app, but you can assign Loopback as an output from Ableton Live, send your master mix out Loopback, and then it can go as an input into your streaming software. So you can make these audio connections virtually or over hardware. Like it just really depends on your scenario, how many computers you're working with, what's the final destination. So it's really hard to recommend. It's funny, I made the lesson on all the signal flow stuff yesterday, and I said like there really is no one right way to do this. Like of course there's bad ways to do it, but like there's multiple right ways to do this depending on your situation.
That's awesome. Yeah, and again, I want to, why don't you just tell us now? Because people are like, here's what I could do, Jake. I could try to chase down every single product you just listed in this entire episode and find links for all of it, and I could put it in show notes, and like 3 people would probably even click on it. Or I could just tell everybody to go to your course, because you will explain that basically if they start your course, they will walk out exactly knowing how to put this system together. So,
totally. Yeah, or they could, or the YouTube channel as well. So, the way our YouTube channel, we have so many videos, and there's even one video on there that I'll send you the link to that you can check out below this video, where it's like 20 minutes long. Visually, I'll walk you through a lot of what we covered here. A lot of people can take that and they can kind of like DIY it the rest of the way, right? But some people just need the show me click by click exactly how to do all this stuff, how to plug it in. Like that's what the courses are for. So go to the one place, if you just want to get in touch with my team, worshipministryschool.com. That's the website where you can apply to join, and then we're going to kind of give you kind of the right direction on like what courses or trainings make most sense for your situation, because it looks different for everybody. That's why we have to talk to everybody who wants to take part in our training. So yeah, just go to that website URL for kind of the one-stop shop to get in touch with my team, and then we can kind of direct you to the right resource from there.
Yeah. Now, but you do have a specific live stream beginner's course too.
Yes,
right?
The beginner's guide to live streaming for churches. I can give you that URL too. So some of these courses we just offer as kind of one-off courses that people can just sign up for. So there's that course. The broadcast mix mastery is the new one about broadcast audio, but that's not released to the public yet. That will be in July or so. But yeah.
Sweet, man. Any final words about live streaming that you feel like we should add?
No, just other than just like you said earlier, you just got to kind of get started and start experimenting. Know that things aren't going to be perfect immediately, but like so much of that learning process happens kind of through just trying it yourself and being able to troubleshoot things yourself. Most of what I've learned in my life has just been like, especially in worship tech, has been like trying it and like if it doesn't work, just troubleshooting it, figuring out what the solution is. And then finally I by the 10th time, I know what I'm doing. Right. So it's like, just don't be afraid to try it. But of course, like if you want to accelerate that process, that's why me and my team are here to help you with this stuff as well. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your ministry. Thanks for your heart. And thanks for all the amazing YouTube videos that you put out.
Thanks for having me on, Alex. Appreciate you.
Sweet. All right, that was it for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in and listening or watching. And I would encourage you to check out all of our links and resources. You can go to worshipministrytraining.com and check out everything we've done over the last 6 years to help you excel as a worship leader. God bless you guys. Have a great day, and I'll see you next month for another helpful episode.